So, welcome back. It's our first guest feature. You've got Mike and Robin today, and we're going to be chatting to Jor'dân. She's a qualified psychotherapist about to move over to Canada, and we're really excited to have you with us today. So Jor'dân, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background and how you found your way into therapy.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to, have a chat with you both today. Just a bit about myself. So my name's Jor'dân. So fast forward before kind of psychotherapy, because that's what I am doing as a job title now. So I've always kind of been involved in sport from like a little girl, and just kind of always done every sport I could do under the sun, like from like egg and spoon race to running, like all the sports, football teams, just, very interested in that. So quite energetic and quite sporty. And then as I got older, I think when I turned about 13, I decided to kind of start training for athletics. So my sport was sprinting. So I did, at that age, I think it was like 80 meters. And then when you get older, you go to 100 meters. So I did like short sprints. It was a great kind of career. And then as I was then I went to Loughborough University, and then kind of competed in books at British University Championships, and then I made a few national championships, and English schools and those kind of things. And then as I was kind of talking to my coach about kind of trying to break into the international kind of world, and getting quick my times, I then got scouted for skeleton. And a lot of people think, oh, how do you get into skeleton in the UK? Because it's a winter sport, and we don't have any kind of ice or snow like other parts of the world do. However, UK sport went on a talent campaign for the 2016 Summer Olympic Games at the time. And
so can I just check something, Jor'dân? Sorry, skeleton, is that the one where you're on a tea tray face down doing like 80 miles an hour? Yeah, is that the one?
That's correct. The ice track is the same one as the bobsleigh. So like probably Cool Runnings, like the big toboggan, like 4-man or 2-man. Luge, which is feet first, and the skeleton head first. Crazy, I know. So
brave.
You're right.
It's called the skeleton.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, it's literally just a sled, and you're on it. So that's kind of how they did a talent campaign for the Winter Olympic kind of sports. So I originally got into rugby England sevens for the summer games, and then skeleton. So I think I did that for both of the camps for about 6 months, and then they were like, you need to make a decision now, because you need to go into kind of further specific training. And I picked skeleton. I love speed, and it was just quite good fun. So then I made the team. And I was training. So 2012 was when I made the actual world-class performance program as one of the elite athletes in the squad. And our goal was 2018 Winter Olympics. So the cycle was pretty fresh, and we had, a decent amount of time to train. So I did compete in Europe and across, North America, so Europe Cup and North America's Cup. However, in 2014, randomly out of the blue, I suffered a brain hemorrhage. And it was quite it was very shocking at the time, because I think I was in the best shape of my life, physically, mentally, really everything was coming together, even nutritionally, everything was just, you know, working in my favor to have the next kind of season or few seasons on ice and do really well and break through. So then, I suffered a brain hemorrhage, it's called an AVM, which is just blood vessels in the back of my cerebellum just ruptured. And because I was 23 at the time, the consultant was saying you probably were born with it, rather than if you were, say, elderly or older in your life, like maybe 80, there's a chance it could have formed over time. But I was 23 at the time, so they said you were probably born with it. So I had to have brain surgery to get rid, lack of a better term, of, you know, get rid of the ruptured blood vessels, because if they didn't, it probably would have ruptured again, that's high risk. So they removed it and kind of rejoined the capillaries and the blood vessels so that it was more stronger. I was in Southmead Hospital, the neurosurgeon or neuroscience and neurosurgery hospital, for about 5 weeks. So that was quite an ordeal, having to kind of learn how to walk again, balance, because I think where it ruptured was in my right cerebellum. So my proprioception was really off. So I had to pick up things off the floor and balance, and it was a big ordeal. But I said to my coaches as well, like, all I need to do, all my goal is to get back on my sled and compete again. And so when I got discharged, I did actually have to go to neurophysio rehab, bit of a mouthful. I think it was 2 weeks for about 3 hours in outpatients clinic with a specialist physiotherapist to kind of work on this finer motor skills, just like dexterity and picking things up. And then I got discharged and I was able to compete again. I started right at the bottom, so first few corners, 10 mile an hour, just getting a feel for it, working my way up, and then competed again. And my first race back, I finished top 10, which was and in Europe for that race. So I was pretty proud. And then I think after that it changes you and you think, I want to do more with my life. So I retired from that. And I remember my sports doctor at the time always used to say, you've got a good affinity for like peer support and supporting people. And I thought, maybe after, you know, my career. But then obviously when I have a brain hemorrhage, I thought, what do I want to do? And then looking back, you know, my university undergrad degree was sports science, and all of my modules I chose, it was almost around psychology and kind of the mind. So I thought maybe there's something in that. So I took about 6 months and just thought, what is it that I want to do? I love helping people. I love science. And then psychotherapy kind of kept coming up on my searches. I thought, I'm drawn to this. So I enrolled at a college, a night class, just to see a certificate course for a year. And then I really enjoyed it. So I went to work at school. And after school, I kind of went there and did my 3 hours of work once a week and got the certificate. And I applied for a master's at the University of Derby for 3 years and then graduated in 2021. So, and then I'm still doing it now. So I think that's kind of the journey that's got me to psychotherapy almost. So it's been a good journey, very turbulent, but I guess I wouldn't change it for the world because it's who I am now. It's what's made me the person I am. So it's been good so far.
Yeah, it's fascinating from being so athletic, having a major health incident, and then almost having to learn to walk again, and then retraining to become a psychotherapist. Wow.
And it wasn't always easy. It was, there's days where I would be in tears. You know, I think one of the times was I was in hospital. I never forget, I had when you go to, say, McDonald's and you used to have the squirty thing to put your sauce in. So you used to have that or the medication. So just medication for whatever you're on. And I remember he gave the nurse, the doctor gave me this pot of pills, and I just dropped them because obviously I'm not really good at holding things, and I cried because I was like, I can't hold a pack of pills, like. And he was like, you've just had surgery, come on, we'll be fine. And he sat with me, but there was times where I just thought, this is really hard, and it shifts your identity where you're thinking, hold on, I was shaping my life to now learning how to walk again. And I think that was the identity. And when you leave sport as well, you have to shape your whole life again, and I think that can be quite difficult. Your identity is impacted greatly. It's a lot to take on.
Yeah, sounds like quite a journey. It's really amazing to hear that.
Yeah.
It sounds like you kind of carried that kind of sports mentality, that resilience, perseverance out of sport into your rehab, and then kind of further into your career now, the kind of change in direction, retraining, that focus, and kind of feel that thread through it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're right. And I feel like that sport has taught me so much, just things like, delayed gratification, working hard, putting the little details and little bit of work in to get the reward later on. And I think that strength, and I'm to go through that at only 23, I think that massively changes your perspective on life and what it is, just to take each day as it comes and give your best that day, and it will be okay. And I think that's very transferable to other walks of life. And I feel like when you do have a particular tough day in therapy, that kind of mental fortitude does get you through. So you're thinking, okay, it's just one day, recoup, rest, recover, and then go again. So I think it does help. It has helped a lot. And I think my threshold for mental and emotional capacity is increased as well from sport.
I like that, rest, recover, and go again.
Yeah. So I guess life keeps going, doesn't it? So you have to take the rest and get back on the wheel when you can.
Go next to the TA stuff.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. I suppose we're starting to touch on your kind of life as a psychotherapist now, and the journey you've been through, and kind of your where you are now in your practice. I think it'd be really useful to get a feel for kind of what your practice is, your modality, and just what that feels like for you and day to day with your clients. And it'd be interesting if you've got any experience of TA as well, just to kind of see how that kind of mirrors stuff.
Yeah, of course. So my modalities are integrative. So it's integrative with person-centered approach, attachment theory, and cognitive behavioral therapy, so CBT. And so I find those three modalities married together almost, it creates quite a holistic approach for clients, because I say, CBT could be very much about the thought process and behaviors now, and problem solving and solution focused things, and quite directive sometimes. And then person centered is quite exploratory, so existential exploration, more about kind of non-directive, kind of the feelings that the client brings and their perspective. But then attachment goes into their childhood. So how I often describe it to my clients when they first come to me for initial kind of consultation is, so yes, you've got your symptom of, anxiety or depression or whatever it may be, or the situation that you're struggling with, whether it be circumstantial, then you have thoughts around that. And then you've got underpinning that as well, like what makes you feel worthwhile, because that's often married into their thinking or their self-criticism. But then also we can go one step further, like, how we got to that point. Why do we think that we are less than or not good enough? And I feel like the core beliefs with CBT, we're able to understand the messages we were getting as a child, maybe indirectly or directly, or from our experiences indirectly as well. That's kind of shaped our thought process to now. So that's kind of how it can marry up. So I feel it's quite a holistic approach, that it's not just about the here and now, it's about your whole life as well, and what's brought you to this kind of point,
Really like the depth that you've got there with, as you say, so that kind of the short term, almost the here and now behaviors, but then the ability to kind of access and uncover your history and the things that have shaped you to kind of deliver you to where you are in the here and now. And I can see a lot of parallels with kind of ego states and stuff in TA. I think we talked about those in episode 2 a while ago, so go back and re-listen if you that kind of thing. But yeah, so absolutely kind of think about the messages and lessons that we learn that are kind of stored in our parent ego state, the kind of the shoulds, the woulds, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And then thinking about, say, the child ego state, where that's, I suppose, more how you kind of interpreted those things and reacted. Did you capitulate and take those on board, or do you rebel against them, or how do you kind of work emotionally with those strong messages, and how does that play out now? And I think there's a lot of similarities, isn't there, with kind of understanding, well, why do I act in this way? What is it is driving me in these different ways? And it's just kind of different avenues, different angles to think about those things.
It is, and I think about the shoulds and the musts, that's similar to say a low self-esteem cycle, or maladaptive assumptions. I should, I must, I ought. It's like, I've worked in the past with clients where they have this necessity. I have to score 100% on everything. I have to be the best at everything. It's like, okay, is that realistic? We're human, we're fallible. We're not our. What if we're tired one day? What if we're poorly one day? You're able to still hit that target it's. So I think when they think like that, or when you have those rigid rules for living, it almost takes away from your human existence, because you're human. Your 80% today might be only worth 40% tomorrow. It doesn't mean you're any less. It just means you're human, and you go up and down. You have emotional states, and you are tired one day or feeling motivated another day. So I think it's about shaping our clients to feel more, it's okay to be okay. It's okay to be better one day and less another day. It's okay. So I think be more accurate and balanced and more compassionate with yourself is the main point here as well.
I think I like that, because in TA we talk about the goal of therapy in classical TA to strengthen the adult, and it's about responding to things in the here and now, not using rules from the past or emotions from your past to make decisions, and being sort of present. So I like that it mirrors across the modalities. The sort of the goals are similar, or sometimes indistinguishable.
Yeah, and I think especially the child place as well, because I know you talk about the ego states as well.
States, yeah.
Yeah. So I think for attachment, it would be more, the verbiage we would use is, you're responding from the child place, and I think tap into that would be, if we're working on something, and when they say something, my kind of next kind of thought would be, how old do you feel when you're saying that, or when you're talking about that? It's like, well, I feel small. Well, how small? Well, I feel 5. Okay, well, what was going on for you at that time? Well, my parents. And then it comes out in the story where that's kind of what was going on for them. So they keep that kind of child with them, and they don't realize that they're able to respond differently as an adult now. They have more control and autonomy over their responses, but they almost feel they don't, because they're not aware of it. So I think if you can bring that awareness to light, they think, oh, actually, I do have control. I can make this decision for myself. I don't need this person to kind of meet my needs. I can meet my own, sort of thing. So I think that is, the awareness, I think, is the big thing.
It's knowing that you've got a choice, isn't it? And that there was maybe not even a conscious choice, but that was the best solution for you at that time when you were that age.
Yeah.
Actually, bringing that into awareness and going, well, that was fine then, but it doesn't serve me now. And how can I think about this a bit differently as an adult, rather than going back to being 6 years old again?
Yeah, exactly. Amazing how it's so closely aligned how you're kind of describing TA, transactional analysis, to kind of attachment as well, because it's true. It's like, gosh, you do have choice, and it's okay that you did respond like that then, because you were only 5 or only 12. And then, because you often hear people berating themselves, I shouldn't have done that. It's like, well, could you imagine telling an 8-year-old off for doing that? No, they're only little. So I think that's compassionate as well. Compassion work for them as well.
It sounds great. I like that modalities are so similar, because I think sometimes when you get trained in one area, you don't always know much, and you don't know much about the crossovers unless it's in an essay and you're doing a critical analysis. So it's nice to be able to see the mirrors. That's good. And I suppose I'm thinking about, our podcast and the focus, and we really want to talk about the idea of culture and thinking about that. How would you describe yourself? What were the words that you like to use to describe your ethnicity, culture, race?
So I kind of describe myself as a Black woman. So my heritage is Caribbean. I was born in Britain, but I identify as Black, and I'm very closely aligned with my culture as well. So that's kind of how I've always identified as well. So yeah.
How do you think that's kind of influenced your practice or your experience as a therapist?
I think I feel like in my experiences leading up to now, I feel like I've always been a minority. So with that being school, in courses, I think obviously university, it's slightly different, more diverse and multicultural. But I feel like in my early years, I was almost the only one that was Black. And then I guess in my training as well, for psychotherapy, that was more diverse because we had a lot more culturally diverse people with different backgrounds, different ethnicities. But still, like if we were to look at it statistically, we would be less. And I feel like because we, ethnic minorities, from my personal perspective, I think because we have a deeper sense of what it's like to be a minority from a different perspective, I feel like I have a bit more ability to understand perspectives and get more insights a bit more, if that makes sense. So I've experienced racism and things like that, so it's like I think it just gives you that extra understanding or awareness. Maybe awareness is what I'm thinking, that actually everybody is literally different, everyone has different experiences, even if they don't say it, you don't almost go with an assumption. I think that's the biggest thing that's given me, from my personal experience, not to assume anything or anyone, because you just never know.
There's a level of curiosity, isn't there? I think that perhaps we as a minority, coming from kind of minority backgrounds, maybe we are maybe slightly more inclined to have that curiosity in some situations, because it's maybe something that, certainly for me, I felt has possibly been lacking coming the other way in some. So I'm, try and model that, or try and not to be the thing that I know has been an issue in my past.
Yeah, and I feel like as well, like sometimes the unwritten barriers aren't really discussed, in training programs, or I think hopefully now, I mean, when I was training, it was very big on social differences, cultural differences, and I think our essays and our work always had to show competency in cultural diversity and cross-cultural kind of competency as well, because that was part of, in order to be a competent therapist, you need to know that this is fundamental to supporting others. And it's not just culture from an ethnicity point of view, it's like family dynamics. Like, you can't just assume, like, just because there's maybe a 2-parent family, that everything's fine. Like, there's dynamics with different children, different parents, there's all sorts. I think, that's really important to understand. But I don't know if, I mean, for me, for training, I felt there was a lot of cultural understanding, but maybe in a broader sense, maybe there's not as much about like the barriers that we would face. That's just my personal thoughts now.
So I'm wondering, sort of, in terms of culture, are we at the awareness stage? I mean, not yet talking about, I don't know, the messages we're hearing. I don't know if awareness is enough, just learning about it. And I think there's something to be said about talking about the barriers that have been different, because it's something about being visually different, and where you don't have the choice. I don't have the choice to say I am a person of color. It's just it's there in the room, but I
Mm.
don't always speak about it. So there's something about that. So I'm thinking also in the therapy room, how does culture show up? Is it something that comes up for you? And how do you think, or what do you think is useful in terms of when thinking about those barriers in your practice? What do you think is useful?
So are you asking me if I've encountered any barriers in my practice? Is that what you're? Yeah.
I suppose I'm wondering how it shows up in the therapy room, and if it does show up, is there advice that you can give on how we should look at addressing that from your experience?
I really do think it's about our biases as well. So I don't know if I read something or someone said to me like your first thought is almost like your unconscious bias, because it's like your knee-jerk kind of assumption, and then afterwards your second and third thought is kind of what you've almost learned or you believe to be true. And I think it's about challenging those, even your unconscious biases, like why did I think that of that particular group of people or whatever, why did my assumption going down that, and almost challenging yourself to almost have that awareness that no, just because you think that or that's the assumption you hold doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Because again, two people from the same ethnicity can have different cultural beliefs. It's so, culture is ever changing, and I feel like there's always going to be different challenges that are going to present. So I think for me in the therapy room, I think I'm just aware of my experiences, and if someone a client in front of me says their experiences, I've got to check in with myself to say, okay, this is their experience, but not allow that to impact my unconditional positive regard for them and have a non-judgmental approach, because again, that's where my awareness comes at. Just because it's not necessarily how I would do things, it's how they do it, therefore I need to meet them where they're at. So I think that gives just me a bit more depth to kind of put myself aside and be in the room with them. I think that's kind of where I've worked on and worked with clients, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does.
I think that can be quite challenging sometimes, can't it? Certainly within TA, there's a concept of I'm okay, you're okay, which is very much aligned with unconditional positive regard. It talks about starting from a point where everyone has intrinsic value as a human being, everyone has worth. Their deeds and actions and things are separate to that, but them as a person, as a human, you have worth and value, and that's that kind of starting point of going, okay, well, we're all even, we're all matched, we're all individuals, but we're all kind of equals as well from that point of view. And how do we find a way to navigate, to build this relationship in the therapy room, to work together, not based on assumptions and things like that and biases, and to challenge those as they come up for us and for the clients.
Yeah, because I think if we hold those and we allow it to play out in the therapy room, it does block the therapeutic relationship and the alliance that you're trying to build, because then you end up, misunderstanding, and then the client feels unheard, and then that's when the relationship could break down. And you can work through the rupture, and it's fantastic if you can, and you can get back on, and there's learning within that, because then they can understand that just because a relationship has gone through a rupture doesn't mean it's ended. So you're always going to come up against challenges in therapy, but I think if you can start off on the right foot with being open and understanding your biases to almost eliminate the unnecessities of that'd be great.
I suppose I'm curious about how open are we about difference in the therapy room? Is it something that you should bring up? Does it depend on the context? Is it something like when you sat in front of somebody, are we saying you look different? And somebody's always going to look different. How explicit are we about cultural difference, or do you find in your practice?
I don't feel like I explicitly ask. I just, from my perspective, I think it's probably quite hard to articulate, but I feel like if someone from a different background is sat in front of me, I try and see them as their entirety. That is them. I'm curious about them. So I'm not just going to assume that I, know part of their identity because of how they're presenting. I'm like, okay, I'm aware that I can see them presenting in this way, but that might not be the full story, So so I think it's adopt the curious mindset and be willing to. I don't think it's up to the client to educate the therapist on culture. I think it's up to us as therapists to understand that, and be competent enough to work with sensitivity to that as well. Because we're only human, we're not going to know everything. But I think if we can be sensitive enough, and if we're not sure about something, it's like, we can be honest and say, I'm just wanting to know about this part. I'm really interested in this part. Can you tell me more about that? I think there's a way you can ask, and I think that is the most important thing. If someone wants to understand you, I think that is just as therapeutic as knowing, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Somebody listening and someone being interested, genuinely interested, that builds bridges. It's a fantastic thing to experience. And I've certainly, thinking about my own therapy journey, my therapist is a white woman, so there's quite a lot of immediate obvious differences between us, but actually we've used that to find commonality in terms of experience of being othered and things like that. And actually there are comparisons that can be drawn, and that commonality that can be found sometimes between these things, but we only got there through having the conversation about different experiences and things like that. So even with the difference, it was still a point of similarity, and definitely formed part of our relationship.
Yeah, and I think there is commonality in difference, like what you've said, that if both parties want this therapy relationship to work, there can be something, because if you two people from different cultures or different ethnicities, they might offer a different perspective. It might be relatable, it might not be, but it still gives rise to, let's explore that. What if, and I think we're always learning about ourselves. So having a different perspective on something can still be just as beneficial, and if it's not, then you can say, I don't that doesn't resonate with me. It's okay, great. Well, now I know what doesn't, and I'm learning more about you in the no's as well. So
yeah, I think that's fantastic. Jor'dân, is there anything else you think you want to add or put out there that's
based on what we've discussed? I feel like there is maybe a bit, could be on barriers, just about in support. I think sometimes in Black culture, I've found that people don't really, especially with men, I feel like they don't always seek support, whether they perceived racism or perceived judgment, or just not having that kind of feeling of safety to kind of reach out and say, I'm struggling with this, because I think society says they need to be strong, they need to be a certain way, and I think that can impact their belief system. So I think on the societal level, those stigmas need to be broken down, that it's okay to reach out and have support, whether you are a man or you've got societal pressures or whatever. I feel like there is some barriers around, or they're underrepresented in kind of mental health support services. I don't know how much it is changed now, but that's kind of something I feel like has been going on for a little while. It's quite sad to see, because there's men out there that do need support and they deserve it, and they're human as well as anybody else. So I feel like if we can, as a society, say it's okay, and I think we're getting better at it with mental health, but I feel like there's certain systemic things that will probably make it easier for kind of Black men especially to seek support. I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are on that, or if they've had an experience in seeing that firsthand with anybody.
Yeah, I suppose I'm curious. Statistically, I'm not sure how many men of color access therapy, and what we as future therapists and therapists can do to make the service more accessible. I don't know what breaks down the barriers is what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. I guess it's not going to happen overnight, but I think if you start talking about it, I think the first thing is talk, and I think awareness is raised, and then maybe something in the future will change. I think mental health awareness is getting better, and I think that's because conversations are being had, and it's not, even within friends, like, male groups, like, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine, but actually, no, like, how are you? Having that safe space to just open up. And I think that is the first part to, letting them know that it's okay to have that support moving forward. I think it's that on the ground level.
Yeah, it's normalizing it, absolutely. It's like, as you say, that kind of how are you, and you get an automatic response. It's very easy to do. I know we all do it, but I think especially in kind of very male spaces, sometimes that can be the default, and then you kind of move on to anything other than the stuff that's difficult to talk about, that potentially could be perceived as weakness, and all the kind of bits you talked about. And I think you're spot on. I think it's normalizing. I think it's visibility of ease of access to services. For me, certainly that's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of follow a psychotherapy path, was the perceived lack of similar people to me when I was looking for help and support. There was very, very few therapists of colour, or any kind of ethnic diversity, certainly within my area that I could reach. And I don't think there was any men immediately within kind of easy reach. But we are seeing more services and kind of support directly thinking about the male perspective. So it's kind of the male experience, as you say, all the unconscious cultural messages and things that come through that potentially prevent us from being vulnerable and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable.
Yeah,
especially around other men, it can be really challenging sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I think it starts, in schools as well. Like, it's okay to, feel, it's literally okay. I think the goal is not to stop feeling, it's about feeling better, being able to feel it better. And I think that's when we're able to process it more. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree. Yeah.
And it's schools, it's home. So I try and model that with my boys. Hopefully, they'll be better at it than I have been, and we'll just keep each time getting better and better and better. Right?
Yeah, and I think as well as we move forward with kind of psychotherapy and mental health, I think more people like myself, Black, will get involved in it, because I think like, I go to the original question, like I still feel like we're more of a minority, and I think the more that we start talking and the more of us become psychotherapists, we can be it as well. So I think that's a good sign.
Thank you, Jor'dân. It's been fantastic talking to you.
Thank you.
I think we learned so much, and it's nice to reach out, and want to wish you all the best on your future journey. Mike, do you wanna? We've been working for months on this one question.
Finally tuning our final question for our guests, and the final transaction then. We've touched on it a little bit now, but TA talks about that the messages that shape us that are stored in our parent ego state, and our intuitive responses and reactions to those into our environment that are in our child, and the choices and the autonomy that comes from accessing our adult and drawing on those different elements. And I think with that in mind, what is maybe the one message or reflection or insight you'd like to leave with people today, that speaks to one of those kind of three areas?
I feel like, if people would just be a little bit more compassionate to themselves, and to understand that the way they think isn't just because the way they think or the way they are. Like, they're a story in they are an experience as well. So I feel like if they can be okay with that, I think if they can accept that, then you can change whatever you want. So I think if we know this is where I'm at, I want to change this part, I want to stop reacting like this, or I know this isn't sitting right, or I'm happy with this part of myself, because we're all human. I think if we can just stop and pause and be like, I am the way I am because of my experiences, but I have the opportunity and the autonomy to change it if I want to. And I think that is the illusion of lack of control, I think, is what's sometimes can be quite difficult.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Like that.
No worries. Thank you.
So we hope you've enjoyed our first guest feature. If you find anything insightful from today, we'd love to hear from you. Please consider writing a review. It helps other people find our content. And Jor'dân, we just want to say thank you so much for coming on board with us today. It's been great chatting to you. Hope to hear from you in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been amazing. It's gone so quick, the time. We've had a good conversation today. So thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
People want to get in touch, have questions for Jor'dân, just find our email address and we'll pass it on to her.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to TA Therapy Ain't Just White. We hope something in today's episode made you feel seen, curious, or just a little more connected. Whether you're a trainee, a therapist, or just therapy curious, you belong in this space. Join the conversation by following us on socials or dropping us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and stay you.